What if the land at the western edge of Europe, where the Atlantic meets the mountains, holds a genetic record older than its stones? Could the DNA buried beneath Portuguese soil tell the forgotten story of how Europe itself was born? Remember that question. We will return to it when the voices of Portugal's first ancestors finally speak. Long before there was a Portugal, before there was even a written word in Iberia, small groups of hunter-gatherers moved along its rivers. 10,000 years ago, they fished the Atlantic coves and hunted red deer across what is now the Tagus Valley. The DNA, found in caves like Lagarvello and Galleria da Cisterna, shows close ties to the first Europeans who survived the Ice Age in the Franco-Cantabrian refuges. They carried genes that still echo faintly in modern Portuguese people, markers linked to light eyes, broad faces, and extraordinary adaptation to the Atlantic climate. Then came a revolution. Around 7,500 years ago, new people arrived by sea from the eastern Mediterranean, the first Neolithic farmers. They brought wheat, barley, and domesticated animals, but they also brought something invisible, DNA, that would transform Iberia. Their genetic signatures trace back to Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, and the Aegean. They mixed with the local hunter-gatherers, blending old and new blood. Archaeologists still find the remnants of their polished stone tools and decorated pottery scattered along the Portuguese coast. For centuries, these farming communities flourished in quiet isolation. Their descendants built the first megaliths of Western Europe, stone circles, dolmens, and passage tombs that still stand across Alentejo and the Algarve. Genetic tests on skeletons from these tombs show continuity across generations, the same maternal lines persisting for 1,000 years. It was a time when ancestry, land, and faith were bound together, but that peace did not last. Around 2500 BCE, a new wave of people thundered across Europe. They carried copper daggers, archery wrist guards, and distinctive bell-shaped pottery, the Beaker culture. Ancient DNA now proves that these newcomers came from the Pontic steppe, near the Black Sea. They carried a new language family, Indo-European, and a genetic marker called R1b-M269, a Y chromosome lineage that would dominate Western Europe. When the Beaker men reached Iberia, they changed it forever. Studies published in Nature and Science reveal that within a few centuries, up to 90% of the male genetic lineages in Portugal and Spain were replaced. It was not mass slaughter, but a slow cultural takeover, migration, marriage, and the power of new elites. The old Neolithic families were absorbed. Their daughters married the newcomers. The result was a population blend that gave birth to the Bronze Age Iberians, ancestors of both Celts and Lusitanians. At this point in the story, pause for a moment, because if you're fascinated by how DNA can uncover the buried chapters of human history, subscribe to GenealogyX. Every week we reveal how science gives new life to the people who built our world. The Beaker DNA is still inside almost every Portuguese person today. Yet the story did not end with them. By 1000 BCE, Atlantic seafarers were moving between Portugal, Brittany, and the British Isles, carrying tin and gold. Genetic traces of this Atlantic Bronze Age show how coastal communities from Ireland to Lisbon were interconnected. Shared burial styles, shared myths, the Atlantic became a single cultural ocean. Then came the Phoenicians from the Levant, the traders of Tyre and Sidon. They founded ports like Cadiz and left behind genetic hints of their eastern Mediterranean ancestry. Later, the Carthaginians and Greeks followed, each wave adding a few more threads to the Portuguese gene pool. But perhaps the greatest transformation since the Beakers came with the Romans. Archaeogenetic data from Roman-era burials in Iberia reveal influxes from Italy, North Africa, and the Near East. Slaves, soldiers, merchants. The empire's diversity flowed into Lusitania, and again the local population absorbed it. When Rome collapsed, new migrants crossed the Pyrenees, Suebi, Vandals, and Visigoths from Central Europe. DNA from early medieval graves in northern Portugal shows traces of their northern ancestry. pale eyes, lighter hair, a sprinkling of Germanic markers that still appear in the Minho region today. Yet for all these invasions, one truth stands out: the genetic foundation of Portugal remained remarkably stable. Studies comparing modern Portuguese genomes with ancient samples show that the core ancestry, Neolithic farmer plus Bronze Age Beaker, still accounts for most of the population's DNA. Foreign conquests changed languages and religions, but not the deep biological story. Still, another twist lay ahead. In the 8th century CE, North Africa crossed the sea. The Moors brought Islam, science, and also genes from Berber and Arab ancestors. Their genetic influence, though smaller than legends suggest, left clear markers in southern Portugal, especially mitochondrial haplogroups linked to Maghreb populations. Even after the Reconquista, that legacy remained. So what does all this mean? If we could read Portuguese DNA like a timeline, it would begin with Ice Age hunters. Gain layers of Near Eastern farmers, surge with the Beaker steppe blood, shimmer with Mediterranean traders, and finally echo with the rhythm of Africa. Few nations on Earth contain such an unbroken mosaic of migrations. Halfway through this story, let's ask the question again. If so many peoples left their mark, what does it really mean to be Portuguese? Is nationality built from DNA or from the stories that DNA carries? Modern genetic maps show that Portugal forms a distinct cluster on Europe's western edge, close to Spain, but uniquely cohesive. Even after thousands of years of movement, the genetic distance between North and South Portugal is small, proof of long internal mixing. The nation's DNA, it turns out, mirrors its geography, a meeting point balanced between continents. Ancient bones from the Tagus Valley tell us more. One individual from the Neolithic shows genetic continuity with Mesolithic hunter-gatherers, while another from the Bronze Age carries steppe ancestry almost identical to that found in Ireland. In their chromosomes, we can literally watch the making of Atlantic Europe, and yet every discovery opens another mystery. Why did the Beaker men replace so many local male lines so quickly? Was it war or status or disease? And how did Portugal's early farmers absorb Near Eastern DNA without losing their own? The answers may still lie hidden in caves waiting to be excavated. Think for a moment about what this means for identity. Every modern Portuguese person carries the memory of countless migrations, African, Mediterranean, and Northern European, woven together by time. DNA proves that purity never existed. Survival came through blending. The people who raised megaliths, forged bronze, sailed the Atlantic, and built empires were linked not by blood alone, but by adaptation. So when you look at a modern Portuguese face, you are seeing the end of a 10,000-year experiment in connection. Inside every cell lives the hunter from the Ice Age, the farmer from Anatolia, the Beaker warrior from the steppe, the Phoenician trader, the Moorish scholar. That is what makes Portugal not just a country, but a chronicle written in genes. If discoveries like these fascinate you, remember to subscribe to GenealogyX. Every genome we decode brings us closer to understanding the shared ancestry of all humankind. Now return to the first question. What if the land at the edge of Europe held the secret of Europe's beginning? The DNA says it does. From the first footprints on Atlantic sand to the explorers who later sailed into the unknown, Portugal's story has always been about meeting and merging. Its ancient DNA doesn't whisper of isolation, it sings of connection. And as scientists prepare to map more genomes from the caves and graves of Iberia, one final mystery remains. Are there still undiscovered lineages beneath the Portuguese soil, ancestors whose bloodlines shaped continents but vanished from memory? Perhaps the next strand of DNA lifted from the earth will not only reveal who the first Portuguese were, but remind us how every civilization is, at its core, a mosaic of all that came before.